Beep, 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 beep. Morning, all that's new and approved from the Jester. Time for a bit of time travel. Buy me a coffee, warrior teacher. Well, I have to keep saying it. I'm going to start advertising. I think we're looking at a cohort for April, as I mentioned before. Men, where are you men? Right, okay. We need men. Okay, so I wrote this a while back, halfway through last year, but I came across it again in my search for something. I can't remember what I was searching for now. But I thought it was worthwhile putting it up in the old Substacks. So the link to the Substack is in the Dubras. But I'm going to go through it as well, so we can have a little bit of discussion about it. And it's entitled, Gender Ideology Sucks, Like a Vampire on the Mythical Trans Child. So it's time to perhaps revisit this. And to begin with, I'll give you some notes on terminology and my thinking. I think gender is generally an American term. It's something that wasn't in the UK vocabulary for a long time. But in the UK, we have adopted it over the past number of decades. But I think it's easier to understand what we mean if we talk about gender being sex roles, which we can, of course, and do transcend without any trouble at all, thanks to having tamed the world somewhat. People are no longer forced to do certain things because we haven't tamed the world. So ideologues are the true believers and their adherents. They need the concept of gender identity to divorce us from the reality of our sexed bodies. In essence, they need it to pathologize the fact of being human, for then they can cure it. They are quacks, right? Gender identity is the anti-personality, or the perversion of personality. It is a perverse separation from our biological bodies, for it implies a disembodied soul that lives within us all. It is a belief system. Gender identity is the 21st century avatar of an ancient idea, the soul. No one has done more to bring pseudoscience and nonsense to the modern day than John Money, Kinsey and their ilk. He and others with their bizarre experiments and pronouncements positing that everything was socially constructed, including sex roles, fitted so well with the progressives across the board in the 20th century that in the 21st their bumbling progeny infest every aspect of life in the UK today. It is in divorcing the reality of sex roles of males and females from the actuality of the two sexes, and there are only two. The progressives have caused untold damage to many and will continue to do so until they are stopped. It's strange to reflect on one's own writing. In the Warrior Teacher Programme, people are encouraged to keep a learning diary so that when we're 9 months down the road, you can look back and go, God, that was what I was thinking, or that's what I learned, or that's what I understood a thing to be. It allows time for reflection. So important in the world we live in now, that ability to reflect and adapt and change. And I said that it would do untold damage, and we're now seeing that it has done the most extraordinary untold damage. And I was saying this off of the back of understanding that there were people, mostly women, who'd come before me who were informing my understanding at that time. And it's been a long journey getting here, and the journey is still not over. We are all learning constantly about this. From LGBT groups to feminists, politically left to right, the search for an anything goes utopia, and the greed of a capitalist market cannibalizing human for profit. From the silent to the noisy and everything in between and across the landscape, the pathologizing of the state of being human is a gravy train that needs stopping. In that paragraph, I think what I'm saying is we're all responsible. I think that's what I was thinking at the time. This is weird, isn't it? Doing your own thing. Reading it back as if I can't remember I did it, which I can't. We are neither mum and pop, Susie homemakers of one division, conservative right, nor are we disembodied androgynous neoliberal Lego kits that can be plucked, tucked and changed at will. You can, of course, as humans do, choose to be mum and pop, and many do. What you cannot choose to be is an androgynous Lego kit, for our sex bodies are real, whether you like it or not. And it is interesting that when you expose these two extreme ends of human sex roles, or non-sex, as the ghouls of the gender ideology bandwagon would have you believe, that you illustrate so beautifully cultural issues in extremis. There are those in existence who would force us all to be mum and pop. Honey, I'm home. But they are few and far between and doomed to failure because people make other choices, and those wedded to the mom and pop idea are generally rare outside hyper-religious zealotry and otherwise all about free speech and individual choice. So I really, I'm saying that there are a lot of people who like that idea, but that even then they wouldn't want to enforce it on others. They're saying this is important. The family unit in that sort of way of thinking about the family unit is important, and it is vitally important. It's vitally important because people find great comfort from raising children, great comfort from taking on roles that some people would see as traditional and beyond the pale. Well, that doesn't mean that you want to stop them doing it. It doesn't mean they want to make us do it. Unless you get to gender ideology, of course. Right? So what I'm saying is that the people that say, well, you want to be mum and pop Susie Homemaker and I can't stand this and I don't like these people, are saying it, but they're not the ones trying to force their entire thinking process and their entire idea of what the world should be down our throats. And doing so using the state, the police, Manchester Museum, the state, the police, I've got it in for them. The state, the police, the NHS, the education system, where are they? This bleating about the right. We know what they look like. It's you we're trying to see properly, you mad left lunatics, right? And your liberals. I hate you all. I hate everybody today. Right. There are those who would force the belief system of gender ideology on us all. And they are far more prevalent and far more dangerous than the ones that they're currently bleating about, the right. Yeah. For they are deeply authoritarian and will enforce their belief by stealth until they reach critical mass, when of course the violence will start. With equity it always does, and this equity is one of the need for us all to believe the same. Flattening of human belief into this one container that is gender identity ideology. Now, I'm not saying for 1 second that it isn't possible for the people on the right who, we should all be mum and pop Susie makers. Susie homemakers can be dangerous. They can be dangerous. But our society has great bulwarks and safeguards against them. We don't seem to have the same against you, with your batty beliefs about men being women, do we? When they are what they are enforcing is a belief system, one predicated on the body as a flesh vessel for a gendered soul, a body that can be surgically altered, and the younger the better, in pursuit of an idea of what is male or female that they have borrowed from the mum and pop crowd, sexualised and marketed to feed the idiotic neoliberal be nice crowd like the slavering pack of Pavlov's dogs they are. They're doing the same thing. Horseshoe. They're doing the same thing. They have weaponized compassion. They have made that which is the best of us the tool for division, rancour and error. The vehicle for this is the child, and while so many of us pair up our collective ignorance, it is they who pay the price. They have weaponized compassion. I can't remember if I've told you about Shenandoah before, but I will, because I tell my warrior teachers and anybody else I teach. I think it's a great story. There was a Neanderthal called Shenandoah, that's what they called him, right? Who they found in a cave. And when they did the old, silent witness type examination, they found out he was 57 and profoundly disabled. So profoundly disabled that he would not have been able to hunt. Right? Which meant that the people of this tribe, of this, Neanderthal, our long gone Neanderthal persons, had to be looked after by his tribe, and they did so till he was 57. His disability was congenital. Isn't that fascinating? Compassion is core to life. Wonderful. Compassion is core to life. And gender identity ideologues weaponize that in an attempt to make you, through the use of your compassion, through being compassionate, to bring into creation the idea of the trans child, a total fantasy that only exists in the minds of fetishistic men looking back in an attempt to justify their fetish. Be kind. These believers seek to create a state of unhumanness, with the pinnacle being the non-binary, mutilated, perpetual child like Avatar, shorn of all sex through nullification surgery, like the angels from Dogma they seek to create on Earth. Non-binary is by far the most dangerous of all this. This is a religious war, and one all the more dangerous for it, because they are behaving with cultish certainty in their attempts to make you compassionate for a thing that doesn't exist, to bring forth an ideology you will then be forced to accept. Trans women and women is the original lie. There are trans children is the second one. Add in the disassociation that technology affords from not just the reality of our bodies, but from life itself. The pathologizing of normal human experience by the well-being crowd and the infantilization of a generation, and you have a perfect storm. Of all the manifestations of that trumpeted need for wellness and mental health, the perpetual inflation of the psychology industry, the creation of infantilized humans who cannot cope with the word no, let alone what life will throw at them, and the urgency of a mental health sales drive that is creating its own market for the products it sells, none is more voracious, dangerous, or pernicious than gender ideology, for it has sideswiped all of us. True. The psychology gravy train rushing forward to provide a fake anchor embodied in the comforting lie of the gendered soul, selling the celebrity idea of trans joy, a fake state of euphoric medicalized bliss, proselytizes to a generation of children, the customers of the future. Children raised in a society on the whole dizzy from the speed of social, cultural and technological change, perpetually behind the loop, swamped in information and frozen with uncertainty. Armies of mental health first aiders are being created within organisations made up of people who have absolutely no expertise to be doing so, and often trained by those with an agenda of their own who are equally unqualified. In schools, this is a disaster in the making. Many of those commenting and sloganeering are in no way qualified or informed enough to do so, and should belt up, for they do not know what they are pushing. Back in, last year, in the midst of time, BPS Official, the Psychology of Sexualities section, which promotes work-relevant LGBTIQ psychology research and practice, and is an offshoot of the British Psychological Society, posted a thread of organisations that have said that the conversion man must include trans people. Posted by their recruitment manager. This was in response to the government stating that the ban on conversion therapy would go ahead, but only on the basis of sexuality and not the made-up of idea of gender identity, which in the 1950s was popularised by previously mentioned sexologist, now discredited John Money. Isn't it? You see, writing last April, and again we see the resurgence of this idea of the conversion therapy ban, including the ridiculous notion of being trans. There are only two possibilities here. That's what we've got to get our head around. That's what everybody has to address this. There are only two possibilities here. Firstly, that a gendered soul exists and is in all of us, in which case it is an innate and normal part of the human experience, and the bodies we inhabit mean nothing outside reproduction. And in addition, that body is filled with a soul by a God that gets it wrong. Now, you either believe that, or you believe that unwell people who need the most individualized care to navigate to a better and more fulfilling life should be supported to overcome and flourish despite that which ails them. In the case of the former, we should not provide health care, and people would not need such, for the body is immaterial. It is what you present as that matters. So they don't need the healthcare. In the latter, we need to get those who believe in a gendered soul out of the way, so we can help those who need it in whichever way enables them to overcome their malaise without mutilating their bodies or taking drugs that are going to make them wretched and head them down a pathway to one of the highest suicide rates known. Trans is either a valid spiritual human way of being, or it is as real as anorexia. Occam's razor and Hitchens' razors both apply. The solution that requires the fewest assumptions is preferable, and what can be asserted without evidence can also be dismissed without evidence. And ask yourself, which is the answer we need? The social construction experiment has failed. Call it gender, call it sex roles. You cannot separate it from our sex bodies. Sex and sex roles are not separable, but the modern world offers everyone choices that would have been unthinkable 200 years ago, and we should all take advantage of that. The motto moving forward must become, leave people alone. We must have the right to be left alone. It is unlikely in the round that men and women will make the same choices. Sex roles have a biological element. We are our sex bodies, folks. And the idea that we are not is profoundly wrong and has led to the mutilation of children, for which we all have a collective responsibility. The gender identity grifters are prolific, but they are also a major strut in the lunatic fringe, and dislodging that strut, denying them access to children, is the best way forward. The myth of the trans child must die. And not giving the belief system of gender identity, which appears only in humans, legal credence like the reality of sexuality, which crosses species. That is the first step in destroying this anti-human phenomena. It's now obviously one of many steps. Looking back at this in retrospect, it's now one of many steps that we need to take. The conversion therapy ban is now in a state it should be, I said back then. It's not now, they're back on it again. Let us not endanger children any further, and let us leave John Money, his weird ideas and questionable experimentations where they belong, on the trash heap of history beside lobotomies. We've reached, I think, a key point in the movement, if you want to call it that, in what has happened over the last few weeks in Scotland, and certainly in the number of people that I'm seeing who see what's going on. What we have not reached yet is a tipping point where people feel comfortable to speak. That's the next important thing, I think. You know, to all of those that are working in this, whether you be in psychology, whether you be in the arts or science, or just some old fart like me talking, right? Keep going. Right? Keep going. They're down, but they're not out, right? And this is the most dangerous of slippery snakes there is, because we've seen it before. Back through history, go back through time, they're always there. They're always there, these people. The purveyors of unreality, the purveyors of grievance, the embracers of victimhood. And every movement that has led to phenomenal brutality has always been a victimhood movement. From the Cultural Revolution, Chairman Mao, through to the Holodomor and the downfall of communism, and the Nazis and the Third Reich. All of them victimhood movements. Call out victimhood status taking where you see it. Don't try and make yourself a victim around me, because I'll have a problem with that. What I'd like to say is, you try and make yourself a victim around me and I'll really make you a damn victim. But of course I can't, because I'm a nice person. Look, we're doing all right, okay? We're doing all right. I look back at that, it's from April, and it does feel to a certain degree like we haven't moved. In fact, we've gone backwards because the conversion therapy ban's back on the bloody front burner. But let's not pretend that we haven't moved. We have moved. The way we address this conversion therapy thing is going to be different this time because people are waking up. We need to remove the language of gendered identity ideology from our vocabularies. Stop using wrong pronouns for people. Stop being kind. Stop saying that what is isn't. Okay? Start to make a start. I've got people are messaging me saying, I've done this at work. I'm waiting to see if I'm going to get fired. These are brave people. Come on. And that's what I see throughout all of it. Lots and lots of brave people, and that's fantastic. It's amazing. It's a wonderful thing to be part of. Absolutely wonderful. Anyway, that's it. Enough of my talking bollocks. Go and do things for your day. Today, I shall be mostly watching Hunters. I'll see you later. Bye.